Morning, everyone. We'll start the Committee of Adjustment meeting to deal with a minor variance. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. One of the purposes of the Planning Act is to provide for planning processes that are open, accessible, timely, and efficient. Accordingly, all written submissions, documents, correspondence, emails, or other communications, including your name and address, form part of the public record and will be disclosed, made available by the municipality to such persons as the municipality sees fit, including anyone requesting such information. Accordingly, in providing such information, you shall be deemed to have consented to its use and disclosure as part of the planning process. I will read the First Nations land acknowledgement now. As we gather today, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for the many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We have no pecuniary interest in this. Not here. Okay. Report on application and notice. Minor variance application A10/22 Keller. Minor variance application A10/22 Keller. That the Committee of Adjustment approved minor variance application A10/22 to permit an increased height for a private garage from 5 meters to 6 meters, subject to the following conditions. 1, the building permit for the proposed garage will be issued within 6 months of the date of the minor variance decision. 2, that the proposed garage will be constructed substantially in accordance with the application sketch, which will be attached to the decision. Okay, I'd like to ask the Manager of Planning and Development to lead us through this application.
Thank you. Should I can be heard on the screen, and of course, technical issues. We didn't check the microphone prior. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you to the new Committee of Adjustment who has been in place this morning. As this is the first meeting, I know that there's councillors that have been on this committee before, but if you could just humor me, I'll give a little bit of background about what this is, and we can always have subsequent discussions later on through your 4-year term about any information. I'm always open and available to have discussions about planning matters. That's what I do. I'll start by saying that the township has a municipal zoning bylaw. And in addition to the Building Code Act, the Township Zoning Bylaw regulates the use, location, and some parameters related to buildings and structures within the township. This is a township document. It's nobody else's. It's ours. It was passed by bylaw in 2006 and has been subject to amendments throughout the years since that time. The point being is minor variances give some flexibility to this document. The zoning bylaw is written black and white. When it says 5 meters in height, that means 5. It doesn't mean 5.2, for example. So that's where minor variances come in. If that makes any sense. I did a report for the committee, and I guess I'll just start down in the section on policy implications. I just gave a little bit of background again, like I just mentioned. Minor variances, what they are, they give flexibility. The zoning bylaw works in 90% of the cases. We find it's a good zoning bylaw. Staff know it very well. It served a great purpose for this municipality, but sometimes people just need some flexibility to get their project moving forward. So that's when applications come to the Committee of Adjustment for a decision. Through a minor variance process, there's also a public notification process. All neighbors within 60 meters of the subject property get a direct mail out, and staff post a notice on the property as well. We use our county, the county has a GIS mapping program that's available on the county website. If council's committee or council is not familiar with that, it's a great resource to look at. If you're looking at the planning application that comes up, you can always look at that county GIS program because it has air photography on it. It has lot lines. It's a great resource that I recommend. We also use that as a means of doing our mail to the abutting property owners. So again, back in the policy implications, it says a minor variance is a variation from the zoning bylaw, and because the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So these are what gauge the merits of the application. In my report to council, which we're going to see minor variances come through from time to time, I'm just recommending, I'm kind of leading with my thoughts, but they're just my thoughts. So the committee comes up with their own position on these things, whether they agree with that it meets the 4 tests. And in most cases, the 4 tests will be, is the application minor, is a minor variance. Not always a numerical assessment, so but minor meaning impact, I guess, if you will. Whether it's desirable and appropriate, whether it meets the general intent of the zoning bylaw. It can't be just way out in left field, something very different. There's other processes for that. Doesn't mean it's wrong, just like other processes instead of a minor variance, and whether it conforms generally to the official plan. And minor variances, that 4th test with the official plan, minor variances don't usually elevate to the policies of the official plan because those are pretty broad land use policies for the county at large. But if I ever notice something that it does relate to that, then I'll do my best to put it into the report for the consideration of this committee. So, like I said, I give some thoughts that I may have related to the application, which I've done in this report. And now we'll just move to the subject application. This is for a private garage. The applicant's name is Keller. They're on 74 Siberia Road. Due to the shape of the structure that they're proposing, it's a steel garage structure, and it's one of those prefabricated steel structures they'd like to install on their property. The municipality has a 5-meter height limitation for accessory buildings. I've included in my report what accessory means and also what height means. Height is not necessarily a straightforward definition. Height isn't always to the peak. In this case, we're measuring it to the peak, but often it's a measure between the eaves of a building and the peak, and it's the average height. That's where it's taken from, because you can have different peak heights, and we find that average, and it's the mass of the structure. We pick up the height definition through that way. In this case, because of the shape of the structure, we're left with measuring to the peak as per the definition in the zoning bylaw, and it's a 6-meter height structure. So for all purposes, I'm recommending that it's minor.
Susan, would you like to do the next section?
Can I just ask you a clarifying point?
Yeah.
If I may. So you mentioned about the dimension and how it's built in that brought up a couple of times with staff. And is it my understanding that one suggestion when you look at the zoning bylaw is to look at the amount of minor variances that have been allowed because of height restriction, to look at that again and clarify that within the zoning bylaw?
Yes, and it's yes. Thank you. So section 2 in the zoning bylaw, it's full of definitions. So often, if we're talking about things, the answer lies within the document. Height is something that comes up from time to time. It could be the shape of the structure, but there's also a very popular request from property owners when they're building garages is to have 2nd-story suites above garages, which the 5-meter height doesn't give enough height to allow people to do that. And it may be argued that that's the purpose of restricting the height, because to not have these unapproved suites above garages. So we can, that's something that's on my radar. I know it's very popular in rural areas, cottage country, people are building a garage. It's can be the time. So it is something that I'm definitely willing, wanting to look into whether, but right now our zoning bylaw does not permit suites above garages. And the definition of height, like Sue mentioned, it's in the report, you can read it. It's not as, like I said, it's not always to the peak of a structure, so you get these situations that fall outside of the definition, and we'll look at height to see if there's a way. It seems to be a recurring request through this variance process to look at. But there always is going to be different types of garage structures out there. Not that long ago, there was a variance, previous council for, large rural garage over, Skeets Road, for example, big structure, they a minor variation as well. So.
It seems like most of the ones that have been coming forward recently have been garage structures and the variance in height too. Yeah. Right, are there any questions for Luke from anyone on council?
Very straightforward.
All right, I'll turn it over to the CEO for the next portion.
Sorry, if I may, could I mention one more thing? I have and back to the recommendation section, you'll see me do this from time to time. If I could just see, I put in 2 suggested conditions for the committee. Again, these are all subject to discussion, and we can refine how we do business as time progresses. If anybody doesn't like this, I'll just speak to my 2 recommendations. That the building permit for the garage be issued within 6 months of the date of the minor variance decision. Now, these folks are looking to get going ASAP with their garage project. But I'll just say this, when we talk about minor variances, they're not, this public circulation is it's not the same as other planning applications, like a zoning, particularly a zoning bylaw amendment. And what's notable with the zoning bylaw amendment, which is what council will see from time to time, is that's reflected right in this document. So it becomes part of the document. Minor variances can have a habit of kind of disappearing. So my take on it is if somebody wants a minor variance, they want it for a specific purpose, for a specific project. So if it's approved by the committee, sure, but let's get moving with the building permit. What I'm not in favor of is otherwise you issue a variance and then somebody doesn't utilize it for many years afterwards, for example, and then a neighbor can come, a neighbor property decide can sell, change hands, and a neighbor then sees something outside of the bylaw and says, where did this come from? I wasn't aware of this. So with the minor variance, they're supposed to be fast. The notice period is short, only 10 days. But let's get moving with the project then. So it doesn't linger on the books, if you will. And then my second recommendation that I'd like to put forth is they've also put forward a sketch to show what they're proposing. You want your minor variance, but let's stick with that then. If you want to find, if you want some flexibility with the zoning bylaw based on a specific proposal, then let's go with that and not make a dramatic change later on and find out later that wasn't what the committee's intentions were or what was put on the table. So those are typical recommendations that I'd like to put forward.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you. So I'll read the evaluation of application for minor variance under section 45(1). So committee members will have to each claim if they feel that these questions are minor in nature. The Committee of Adjustment must consider 4 tests when reviewing a minor variance application. These tests are provided in section 45(1) of the Planning Act. The variance is minor in nature.
Yes.
Yes.
The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure.
Yes.
The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained.
Yes.
Yes.
The general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the application cannot meet all of the 4 tests, it should be refused. All 4 have been deemed as just.
Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minor variance application A10/22 to permit an increased height for a private garage from 5 meters to 6 meters, subject to the following conditions. That the building permit for the proposed garage be issued within 10 months of the date of the within 6 months of the date of the minor variance decision. 2, that the proposed garage be constructed substantially in accordance with the application sketch, which shall be attached to the decision. Could I have a mover for that? Councillor Schuler, seconded by Councillor Ostrowski. Any discussion? If not, could I see a show of hands? All in favor? And that is carried.
A copy of the decision of the committee will be sent to the applicants and to each person who appeared in person or by counsel at the hearing and who has filed with the secretary treasurer a written request for notice of decision. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Madawaska Valley in respect of this application, you must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Madawaska Valley. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Madawaska Valley before the decision is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Madawaska Valley before the decision is made by the Committee of Adjustment, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so.
So I now declare the meeting closed at 9:46 a.m.